And being chosen by God is not a matter of mere favoritism or fortune. It is a divine calling rooted in purpose, discipline, and spiritual transformation. And many imagine being chosen means living a life of blessings and favor, but in truth, it often begins in obscurity, hardship, and divine testing. And when God selects someone, He sets them apart, not to elevate their comfort, but to refine their character. And to be chosen means to be entrusted with something sacred, something that requires endurance, obedience, and faith beyond what the ordinary person might comprehend. The chosen are not perfect, they are willing. And God looks not at outer qualifications, but at the heart's posture. And He takes ordinary people and shapes them through extraordinary circumstances to reveal His glory through their lives. And the process of being chosen often begins with a divine interruption. God disrupts the ordinary rhythm of life to redirect one's path toward His purpose. And like Moses in the wilderness or David tending sheep, the chosen are often called while doing something seemingly insignificant. Yet it is in those quiet and unnoticed moments that God begins His greatest work. Being chosen demands sacrifice. It means surrendering personal desires, ambitions, and plans for something far greater, God's eternal design. It means walking away from what is comfortable, enduring seasons of isolation, and trusting divine timing even when the road ahead is unclear. Being chosen by God also comes with responsibility. Every gift, every revelation, and every blessing is given not for self-exaltation but for service. The chosen are called to carry the light of truth into dark places, and to be vessels of God's love, and to stand firm even when the world rejects them. This calling brings spiritual warfare, and because the enemy always targets those carrying divine purpose. Yet the chosen are strengthened not by their power, but by God's grace. And the anointing that rests upon them makes them resilient in trials, patient in silence, and faithful even in pain. At times, being chosen feels lonely. And others may not understand your journey. You may question why life seems harder or why certain doors close while others walk freely. But God's choosing is not about ease, it's about endurance. Every challenge is designed to teach reliance on Him. And every silence from heaven is meant to deepen trust. Every storm is preparation for leadership. When the chosen endure these tests, they emerge stronger and wiser and ready to fulfill divine destiny. To be chosen by God is to live differently, think differently, and walk differently. And it means rejecting the patterns of the world and embracing divine principles. The chosen understand that true strength is found in surrender, and true success in obedience, and true victory in humility. When God calls you chosen, He marks you with divine favor that no man can erase. And He writes your name into His eternal plan, giving meaning to every trial and beauty to every scar. Those who are chosen often find themselves walking alone. And this spiritual isolation is not punishment but protection. God separates His chosen ones from the noise of the world to fine-tune their spiritual hearing. And He removes unnecessary attachments so that His voice can be heard clearly above the chaos. And many struggle to understand why divine purpose requires loneliness, but every chosen soul must pass through this quiet valley. And it is in the stillness that God whispers identity and vision. The spiritual isolation of the anointed is sacred territory. And when God anoints someone for purpose, He often hides them before revealing them. And anointed walk a road few can understand because their path is customized for their calling. Friends may fall away, relationships may shift, and support may vanish. But these losses are divine rearrangements. God does not allow the chosen to depend on human validation. And He teaches them to draw strength solely from His presence. Isolation becomes a classroom where faith matures. It is here that the anointed learn patience and endurance and discernment. God often removes the crowd so that the chosen can recognize His voice without confusion. The noise of human opinion fades and divine truth becomes louder. The chosen begin to realize that solitude with God is not emptiness but empowerment. While others see rejection and heaven sees preparation, this loneliness also tests loyalty. Will the chosen remain faithful when no one applauds, when prayers seem unanswered, and when dreams delay? It is easy to serve God in seasons of celebration, but the chosen must also serve Him in silence. And their faith becomes refined in solitude like gold in fire. They learn that walking alone with God is better than walking with many without Him. Over time, and what once felt like isolation transforms into intimacy. The anointed discover the sweetness of divine companionship, and realizing that they were never truly alone. In this sacred solitude, God reveals deep mysteries, renews strength, and equips his servant for the next season. And the spiritual isolation of the chosen is not the end, it is the preparation for a divine manifestation. When the time is right, God brings them forth, and shining with wisdom, humility, and spiritual power that could only have been developed in secret. When God chooses someone for a divine purpose, and he does not immediately thrust them into the spotlight. Instead, he takes them through a hidden training ground where their faith, patience, and endurance are refined. This divine preparation often takes place in obscurity, far from recognition and applause. And it is in this secret place that the chosen learn the art of surrender, the discipline of obedience, and the strength of resilience. And God's hidden training ground is where he builds character before granting influence. Many desire the anointing, but few are willing to endure the process that shapes the vessel to carry it. And every great servant of God in Scripture went through a period of divine concealment. Joseph was trained in prison, David in the wilderness, Moses in exile. And even Jesus spent years in silence before his public ministry. These hidden seasons are not wasted time, they are sacred classrooms. God uses isolation and trials and even disappointment to equip his chosen ones for the battles ahead. The training ground may look like loss, but it is actually preparation. And it may feel like rejection, but it is redirection. God hides you until you are ready to handle what he has planned. In this hidden season, and God often strips away everything that could become a distraction. The chosen must learn to depend fully on him. Comfort is replaced with challenge, and clarity often gives way to confusion. But in this uncertainty, trust is forged. When you cannot see the next step, and you learn to rely on the one who holds the map, God allows challenges that break pride and produce humility. And he teaches patience by delaying what seems urgent and strengthens endurance through trials that seem endless. And every delay in God's training ground carries a divine purpose. It shapes you into the person he designed you to be. And the hidden training ground is also where God transforms knowledge into wisdom. The chosen learn not only what to do, but when and how to do it. And they begin to understand timing, knowing that moving too soon can destroy what was meant to bless. God trains them to listen more than speak, and to pray more than plan, and to act only when he commands. This process may feel painful, but it protects the chosen from premature exposure. And God hides his treasures until they are ready to shine, when the season of training is complete. And what emerges is not just a gifted individual, but a vessel of divine authority, molded through patience and fire. And loneliness becomes a recurring theme in this preparation. The chosen often find themselves misunderstood, overlooked, or abandoned. But these experiences are not random. They are part of the training. God uses solitude to refine focus without the noise of external voices. And the chosen learn to hear his whisper more clearly. In the hidden place, the heart becomes tender. The spirit grows sensitive. And the will aligns with heaven's purpose. When the training is complete, and the chosen step into their destiny with a quiet strength and unwavering faith that can withstand storms. Walking alone, however, is one of the hardest parts of being chosen. Loneliness becomes both a test and a teacher. It reveals the true state of the heart and the depth of faith. When no one understands your journey, and when support disappears, you discover whether your confidence truly rests in God or in people. And loneliness exposes false attachments and teaches total dependence on the divine. It breaks self-reliance and replaces it with spiritual intimacy. And in the wilderness of solitude, the chosen learn that God is not just a provider of blessings, he is the very breath that sustains them. And loneliness also serves as a test of faith. It challenges the believer to keep walking even when there are no visible signs of progress. It asks the question, will you still trust God when you cannot feel him? The chosen must learn to walk by faith, not by sight. And every step taken in loneliness becomes an act of worship. God watches closely how his chosen respond to seasons of silence. And those who remain faithful despite emptiness become vessels he can trust with greater revelation. Moreover, loneliness deepens spiritual intimacy. And when there is no one else to turn to, the soul learns to converse with God in new ways. Prayer stops being a ritual and becomes a lifeline. And tears turn into worship, and silence becomes sacred. In these moments, God reveals himself as a friend closer than a brother. He comforts, instructs, and strengthens the heart to keep moving forward. In time, what once felt like unbearable solitude transforms into divine companionship. And the chosen realized that they were never truly alone. God was present in every step, shaping them for a higher calling. And loneliness becomes the bridge between human weakness and divine strength. Those who endure it with faith come out stronger, wiser, and filled with unshakable confidence in God's plan. The test of loneliness becomes the testimony of unwavering faith. Before every elevation, and there comes a season of separation. God never promotes without first purifying, and that purification happens when He begins to remove certain people and habits and distractions from your life. This separation is often painful because it feels like loss, but in reality, it is divine positioning. And God separates to sanctify. He cannot elevate someone who is still entangled with what He intends to leave behind when you are chosen for a higher calling. And not everyone can go with you. The paths that were once shared begin to diverge because your destination is no longer the same. And the chosen must learn to accept this divine pruning as part of the journey toward purpose. Separation is necessary because elevation demands clarity. And God cannot build something eternal on a foundation crowded with confusion and compromise. When He separates you, He is clearing space for His glory to dwell. And the chosen often find that familiar relationships begin to fade. Doors that once opened are suddenly shut. And environments that once felt comfortable now feel foreign. These are signs that God is shifting you to a higher level of faith and focus. And you cannot bring old mindsets into new seasons. Just as Abraham had to leave his homeland before God could make him a great nation. And every chosen one must walk away from what feels secure to embrace what is sacred. God uses separation to protect the chosen from premature exposure. And when you are surrounded by the wrong people, their voices can drown out God's. The Lord often allows isolation to preserve purity. And the chosen cannot afford to be influenced by those who do not share their vision or faith. And this is why certain friendships end unexpectedly and certain opportunities fall apart. God is removing anything that could corrupt your calling. And while it may feel like rejection, it is actually divine redirection. He separates not to hurt, but to heal, not to punish, but to prepare. And this separation also builds spiritual maturity. It teaches the chosen to walk by faith, not by sight, to obey even when understanding is absent. And God's pruning process may strip away comfort, but it produces character. It is during these moments that the chosen learn perseverance and humility. And you realize that elevation is not about climbing higher in the world's eyes, but about descending deeper into obedience. And every separation creates room for greater revelation. Once the noise is silenced and the unnecessary removed, and the chosen begin to hear God's instructions more clearly, what was once confusing becomes simple, and what was once heavy becomes light. And when the season of separation ends, those who endured it emerge lighter, stronger, and ready for divine elevation. As separation ends and another divine mystery begins, the season of silence, there comes a time when God's voice seems hidden and His presence feels distant. And this is not a punishment, but a deeper phase of growth. Divine silence is one of the greatest tests of faith, and it teaches the chosen to rely on the memory of God's past faithfulness when His present voice cannot be heard, when God seems quiet, and He is often speaking in ways beyond words. His silence is not absence, it is communication at a higher frequency, and one that can only be understood by a matured heart. In these quiet seasons, God draws the chosen closer. He speaks through circumstances and through inner conviction and through stillness. The chosen learn to listen not with ears but with spirit. Divine silence trains discernment, and it separates emotion from revelation and forces the believer to anchor in truth rather than feeling. And many lose faith during silent seasons because they mistake God's quietness for disinterest. But those who understand His nature know that silence is a form of speech. It means He is watching, testing, and preparing to move in His time. And silence also strengthens faith by removing dependency on constant confirmation. And the chosen learn that God's last instruction is enough until He gives the next one. When He does not speak, and He expects you to keep obeying what He already said. This stage builds spiritual discipline and deep trust. In the silence, pride dies, fear dissolves, and inner peace grows. The chosen realize that their relationship with God is not transactional, but transformational. And there is also revelation hidden in divine silence. Sometimes God withholds answers because he wants you to seek him, not solutions. In the stillness, and he reveals secrets that cannot be found in the noise. He teaches patience, contentment, and surrender. And when you no longer chase signs or voices, but rest in his presence, you reach a level of intimacy that transcends words. In time, and silence gives birth to revelation. What once felt like distance becomes divine direction. The chosen emerge from the quiet place with renewed strength and clearer purpose and deeper understanding of God's heart. They realize that silence was never emptiness. It was preparation for a louder revelation. And separation stripped away distractions, and silence tuned the soul to hear heaven's frequency. Together, they create the foundation for spiritual elevation. And where the chosen walk not by sight or sound, but by unwavering faith in the unseen hand of God. When someone is chosen by God, and they carry a spiritual weight that naturally attracts opposition. The moment divine purpose is revealed, darkness responds with resistance. And spiritual warfare is not a sign of weakness, it is confirmation of calling. And the chosen are often targeted because they hold within them the potential to disrupt the enemy's plans. Their prayers carry power, and their words bring change, and their obedience releases divine authority. This is why spiritual battles intensify as they draw closer to their destiny. And every attack, delay, or confusion is designed to distract or discourage them from fulfilling their divine mission. And the chosen must understand that this warfare is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces that operate in unseen realms. And it is not the people around them who are the real enemies, but the spirits that use circumstances to sow fear, doubt, and division. And when the chosen realize this truth, they stop fighting in the flesh and begin fighting in the spirit through prayer, fasting, and unwavering faith. And God equips his chosen ones with spiritual armor, righteousness, faith, salvation, and the word of God. These are not just symbolic, and they are the tools for victory in unseen battles. Spiritual warfare often intensifies during seasons of transition, when God is about to elevate, and the attacks become stronger because the enemy fears the influence the chosen will have once they reach their next level. And the darkness always tries to strike before dawn. It attacks the mind with lies, whispering that God has abandoned them or that their calling is meaningless. And it attacks the body with fatigue, illness, or distraction. It attacks relationships to cause isolation and division. But what the enemy means for harm and God uses for training, every battle becomes a classroom where faith is strengthened and authority is learned. And the chosen are not called to avoid warfare, but to overcome it. Their resilience in spiritual battles builds endurance through warfare, and they learn discernment to recognize when something is not of God and to respond with spiritual wisdom instead of fear. And the chosen learn that victory does not come from shouting louder, but from standing firmer in truth. And prayer becomes not a reaction to trouble, but a lifestyle of communion with God. Through constant battles, they develop spiritual maturity and realizing that warfare is not punishment, it's preparation for power. The enemy does not waste resources attacking those who are doing nothing, and he targets those who carry impact. In every battle, the chosen grow more dependent on God. And they discover that strength is not found in self-effort, but in surrender. The war teaches them humility, reminding them that victory belongs to the Lord. And when they come through the fire, their faith is purified and their authority is solidified. Every scar becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness, and every struggle becomes a stepping stone toward purpose. Yet, one of the deepest pains the chosen face is not only warfare, but being misunderstood. And those walking in divine purpose often find themselves judged, rejected, or criticized by others who cannot comprehend their calling. And misunderstanding becomes one of their greatest emotional trials. People around them may misinterpret their actions, question their motives, or accuse them of pride simply because they follow a path that looks different. But the chosen must remember, divine direction will rarely make sense to those who are not walking in it. And this misunderstanding can come from unexpected places, family, friends, or even fellow believers. And those closest to the chosen may not understand why certain decisions are made or why isolation is necessary. And when God begins to move someone into deeper levels of purpose, he often separates them from familiar patterns, and that can look strange to others. And misunderstanding hurts deeply because it attacks the desire to be accepted. The chosen must learn to be at peace even when misjudged. And Jesus himself was misunderstood by his own people, called names and falsely accused, yet he never allowed misunderstanding to distract him from mission. And God allows misunderstanding as a tool for growth. It teaches the chosen to seek validation from him alone, not from human approval. When people misjudge you, Ed is teaching you to be confident in what he told you, even when others don't see it. Misunderstanding also strengthens compassion, and it softens the heart toward others who suffer in silence. And it teaches patience to wait for the right time when God will reveal the truth and vindicate his servant. Over time, and the chosen begin to realize that misunderstanding is often protection in disguise. If everyone understood them, and everyone would have access to their vision, and not all are meant to. And God hides certain things in mystery so that only those with spiritual insight can discern them. The chosen learn to walk in peace amid false opinions, and knowing that time and fruit will prove what words cannot. In the end, both warfare and misunderstanding serve a divine purpose. They refine character and build endurance and deepen dependence on God. Every battle strengthens the spirit, and every misunderstanding purifies the heart. And the chosen who endure these tests without bitterness emerge as true warriors, humble, wise, and anchored in faith. And they come to understand that being misunderstood is part of being set apart, and that every battle, seen or unseen, and is shaping them into a vessel fit for God's greatest work. And transformation through solitude is one of the deepest and most sacred parts of the chosen one's journey. When God calls someone apart, and he often brings them into seasons of solitude, not to punish, but to transform. In solitude, the noise of the world fades away, and the heart becomes more attuned to the whisper of heaven. This isolation is where strength is born, identity is clarified, and purpose is refined. And it is not easy, because being alone exposes every weakness, every doubt, and every fear. And yet it is precisely in this vulnerability that God does his greatest work. He strips away false confidence and replaces it with spiritual resilience. And he removes the need for validation and replaces it with divine assurance. Solitude becomes a sacred furnace, and burning away everything that does not align with divine purpose. In these hidden seasons, and the chosen one learns who they truly are apart from the expectations of others, without the constant noise of opinions or comparisons, and they begin to rediscover the voice of their Creator. Many people run from solitude because it feels uncomfortable, but the chosen are called to embrace it. And alone with God, they learn lessons that cannot be taught in the crowd. They begin to understand that purpose is not birthed in public, but in private. And the same God who molded Moses in the wilderness and David in the caves still works through solitude today, in the quiet. And the chosen develop spiritual muscles, patience, faith, endurance, and humility. Transformation through solitude also involves purification. And God allows stillness so that hidden motives and unhealthy attachments can surface when there are no distractions left. And the chosen confront the truth about themselves. They see where pride lingered, where fear controlled, and where trust was shallow. And God uses that awareness not to condemn, but to heal. The chosen are shaped into vessels of grace because they have faced their own brokenness in private. And they learn to stop striving for perfection and start relying on God's strength. In solitude, prayer deepens, worship becomes more intimate, and faith becomes unshakable. The heart becomes a sanctuary where God dwells freely, and the chosen emerge from solitude with a new sense of spiritual authority. This transformation is not quick, and it takes time for the old self to fade and the new nature to take root. There are moments of silence, tears, and confusion, but each of these experiences is necessary. The chosen eventually realize that solitude is not emptiness. It is sacred preparation. And the person who enters solitude broken often leaves whole, no longer defined by external validation, but by inner peace. By the time the season ends, and the chosen walk with calm confidence, anchored not in their ability, but in God's presence. Solitude becomes their secret strength, and a place they return to even after elevation, because it is where they learn the language of heaven. Every hidden season carries a divine purpose. And when life feels still, when prayers seem unanswered, and when progress feels delayed, it is easy to assume that nothing is happening. But God's timing works differently from ours. What looks like a pause is often divine alignment. And purpose of hidden seasons is to prepare everything necessary for what's coming next. God uses time to orchestrate events, position people, and open doors that will align perfectly when the moment of manifestation arrives. While the chosen wait, God is not inactive. And He is working behind the scenes, building the foundation for what is eternal. Hidden seasons also teach the chosen patience. And waiting reveals what is truly in the heart. It shows whether faith is rooted in feelings or in trust. And the chosen must learn that delay is not denial, it is development in these quiet times. And God strengthens their character so that they can handle the weight of the blessings to come. And many people want the promise but are not prepared for the responsibility attached to it. And hidden seasons are where God ensures that your maturity matches your calling. And He tests your heart to see if you can remain faithful when nothing seems to be happening. During these periods, the chosen often wrestle with doubt. And they question if they missed their opportunity or if they misunderstood God's direction. But hidden seasons are meant to silence doubt through revelation. And God reminds His chosen ones that His ways are higher and His timing is perfect. What is delayed is not forgotten. And sometimes the hidden season is not about preparing the person, but about preparing the environment where they will be planted. When the conditions are right, and the fruit will grow effortlessly. Hidden seasons also build gratitude when the chosen finally step into fulfillment. And they appreciate every struggle that shaped them. They realize that the stillness taught them strength, and the silence taught them to hear God's whisper. And what they once saw as delay becomes evidence of divine wisdom. The purpose of hidden seasons is to make sure that when the chosen rise, and they rise with humility, grace, and spiritual authority, in the end, and both solitude and hidden seasons serve one goal: to align the chosen with God's perfect plan. They are not setbacks but sanctuaries, and not endings but beginnings. The chosen who embrace these seasons come forth purified, focused, and ready to fulfill their destiny. And when God finally reveals them, the world sees the glory, but only heaven knows the cost of that transformation. Though the chosen ones often walk alone, and they are never truly forsaken, God's presence may not always be visible, but it is constant in the moments when life feels heaviest, and when prayers seem unanswered, and when silence fills the air. God is closest. The chosen walk a path of faith, not sight. And they learn to trust that even in their solitude, divine companionship is unwavering. God's invisible hand guides each step, and His Spirit strengthens them when the weight of their calling feels unbearable. It is easy to assume that walking alone means abandonment, but God's design is often hidden in silence. He removes visible support so that His children can experience the power of invisible grace. And the chosen are taught through loneliness to recognize divine presence in ways others cannot. When everyone leaves and no comfort seems near, and the Spirit of God begins to speak through peace, through whispers, and through inner assurance. And the chosen come to realize that His presence is not limited to blessings or answered prayers. It is the quiet strength that carries them through chaos. And they feel Him not through sight, but through faith, not through noise, but through stillness. God never forsakes those He calls, even when they stumble. And He lifts them up, even when they doubt. He reassures them. His covenant is eternal, and His love is unbreakable. And the path of walking alone builds an intimacy with God that can never be formed in comfort, when there are no human hands to hold. And the chosen learn to hold on to God. When no one understands their pain, God listens. This personal relationship transforms their perspective. And they begin to see that solitude with God is far richer than companionship without Him. In time, what once felt like isolation becomes communion. And the chosen realized they were never alone in the wilderness. God was walking beside them, preparing them for the promise. And His presence turns darkness into revelation, fear into faith, and pain into purpose. Even when the world rejects them, God remains their anchor, and He surrounds them with divine protection. They may not see the angels standing guard, but they feel the peace that surpasses understanding. And when the chosen cry, their tears are not wasted. They are prayers written in heaven's language. Every moment of pain draws them deeper into trust. And every unanswered question becomes an invitation to faith. Walking alone is not about enduring abandonment, but about learning to walk with the unseen. And God's nearness in solitude transforms the chosen into vessels of unshakable confidence. And they no longer fear being alone because they know the presence that never leaves. In this journey, and they discover that God hides his presence not to distance himself, but to deepen their desire for him. And he withdraws the feeling of closeness so that faith can mature beyond emotion. When the chosen reach this point, their trust is unmovable. And they walk boldly into destiny, knowing that whether they feel him or not, he is there. They are never forsaken, only strengthened in secret. And as the chosen progress through trials, separation, and divine silence, the reason behind it all begins to unfold. And God's hidden reason for allowing them to walk alone becomes clear. It was to transform, refine, and prepare them for a greater purpose. And every moment of loneliness was a tool of divine construction, shaping their heart into a vessel capable of carrying his glory. The hidden reason is purification. God allows his chosen ones to be stripped of pride, distractions, and dependence on people so that they become fully dependent on him. Only through isolation can purity of purpose be formed. And the chosen's journey of walking alone also awakens spiritual sensitivity. The absence of noise heightens discernment. And they learn to distinguish between their voice, the world's voice, and God's voice. In the stillness, their spiritual hearing sharpens. And they begin to sense divine instruction more clearly. And God uses this clarity to prepare them to lead others, because leadership in the kingdom is not about power or position, but about obedience and humility. And the chosen must first learn to follow God alone before they can guide others toward him. Another part of God's hidden reason is authority. And the chosen cannot carry divine authority without understanding submission. And isolation teaches them to bow before God so that they can later stand before men with confidence. It teaches them to obey even when they do not understand, and to speak when God says speak, and to stay silent when he commands silence. Their authority is born not from ambition but from brokenness. And God's power flows best through those who have learned to yield completely to his will. God's hidden reason also involves timing. And he allows solitude so that the chosen do not rise too soon. Premature elevation can destroy purpose. God hides them until both they and the world are ready. And in his perfect timing, he reveals them, not as victims of loneliness, but as vessels of glory. When they finally step into the light, and their presence carries a weight of wisdom that could only be birthed in obscurity. People see their strength, but not the solitude that shaped it. Ultimately, and the hidden reason behind walking alone is transformation into divine likeness. The chosen begin to reflect God's nature, gentle yet strong, and humble yet powerful, silent yet full of truth. Every lonely night, every tear, and every unanswered prayer was a part of his masterpiece. And what seemed like isolation was actually intimacy. What appeared to be loss was preparation for divine restoration. When the chosen finally understand this, and they no longer isn't walking alone, they thank God for it, because in walking alone, they never truly walked alone. And every step was guided by the hand of the one who called them chosen.